Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to C&J Speedway. YouTube. My name is Chris Burns. Across the street for Red Beats headphones is my partner in crime, Corey Huffnagel. Corey, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. I hope you had a really good 4th of July as of I
Corey,
did.
are you still alive?
Yes, I am still alive. I'm still here. And all I can just say is it wasn't too much going on for 4th of July. We had a little bit of a party, a little get together. And, other than that, it was pretty relaxing, as I must say.
Yeah, I've been a pretty good Independence Day myself. Producer Eddie Focus was there with us. Had my daughter here. Time. We bizarre mini mansion where many great racing and football parties are held. And happy birthday, America. And even though it's not his birthday, happy day for our friend Spencer Gallagher. Corey, tell all the folks the great news.
So, as it was announced yesterday on 4th of July, NASCAR announced that they are going to reinstate Spencer Gallagher. So, in case you guys were aware, he did compete in the Xfinity Series this year. He won a race at Talladega, and then, of course, a couple days afterwards, he ends up getting suspended indefinitely for violating the substance abuse policy whatsoever. And it was announced on Wednesday afternoon that Gallagher successfully completed the NASCAR's Road to Recovery program. So that's the great news. The bad news is, since he only has that one win at Talladega, he is ineligible to run for the Xfinity playoffs. And honestly, when I was reading this, I said, okay, I'm happy that he's back, but I kind of disagree, that he's ineligible to run for the championship because, I really don't know, because the reason why they said that was because he didn't qualify for every race this year. And I thought, well, you look at what happened with Tony Stewart and Kyle Busch a couple years ago when they had their injuries, they came back, I think, a couple of races into the season. NASCAR said, okay, we'll give you a playoff waiver, but you have to win races and be in the top 30 whatsoever. And those guys did that. Kyle Busch 2015, he won 4 or maybe 5 races in the regular season, goes on to win the championship. And then Tony Stewart pretty much 2016, he wins a race after suffering a back injury when he was doing that sand dunes whatsoever. Wins at Sonoma, gets into the playoffs, doesn't really make it that far. So my little question is how come Tony Stewart and Kyle Busch get those playoff waivers, but not Spencer Gallagher? Because the only thing is, I was kind of questioned by that, and I kind of said, I agree that he's coming back, and I'm happy that he's coming back, but I just don't agree with NASCAR saying, okay, you're not eligible to run for the championship.
I'm going to break it down because I said the same thing to you in the text messages that we share throughout the week. And the more I got to think about it, Kyle Busch went down with an injury. Tony Stewart went down with an injury. Spencer Gallagher violated the substance abuse policy.
Yeah.
To exclude Stewart and Busch from the championship run because of an injury, I can understand, not entirely their fault. But then again, you're a race car driver. You know the risks when you strap yourself in behind the wheel. What Spencer Gallagher did was not anything on-track related. So it's a fitting punishment, but it does call into question the practice of NASCAR at times changing the rules to benefit certain people while ignoring the rules for others.
Mm-hmm.
So while I tend to feel sad that Gallagher, even with the win at Talladega, won't be eligible to run for that championship, he kind of did this to himself. So there's not a lot of heartbreak on my side, although I do feel bad for him. But he's a kid that's going to bounce back, and next year he's going to be right back in that hunt.
I couldn't disagree with you on that one. I really think, Gallagher, could be back in the hunt next year. And then let's not forget, guys, he's going to be back at Kentucky next week because Chase Elliott is going to be in the 23 cars. So, but yeah, yet again, it's a whole different scenario because, again, with Gallagher violating the substance abuse policy, it's pretty much different. But then yet again, I still think, they shouldn't, keep him ineligible. But then yet again, NASCAR pretty much makes the call and it's their rule.
Yeah. and it doesn't necessarily make it easy to swallow. If you're one of those NASCAR fans that just looks at them, as many have over the years, where they just flippantly change the rules, sometimes midway through the season, I'm sure somewhere written in the substance abuse policy that all of these drivers sign off on says, hey, if you fail, you're going to be ineligible for the championship that year. We don't know that.
Right.
And to their starters or eligibility at the extended wait until Corey tells me I'm okay, and we will move on. And I hear Corey, so I guess we're good to move on. So we're going to break down Chicagoland for you. A great weekend of racing, starting with the trucks. And get this, man, a sponsor already. Brett Moffitt comes away with the victory. Corey, I know we're both excited about this, but did you see the truck race? And if you did, tell us all about it.
Well, all I can just say is it was pretty much me and my girlfriend, Chelsea, ended up watching the race on Friday night. So let's just say, guys, I pretty much did all the teaching and everything else that goes with it in the trucks. And it's actually kind of funny because Chelsea actually cheered for the 16 of Moffitt, and even I cheered for Brett Moffitt. And I wasn't, I technically, I'm starting to become like a Moffitt fan, because we're already seeing a huge story in 2018. I'm sorry. But, just think about it. This kid, has won 3 races so far this year and is yet to find a full-time sponsor. I mean, go back to last week where, he wins at Iowa and they were questioning, okay, is Brett going to have a sponsor, going to Chicago? Sure enough, boom, they get 2 races for Chicago and Kentucky. And the one thing I turned out, so I was kind of watching this race real carefully, and I said to myself, okay, I really think Moffitt is going to be a sleeper because he's run good on the mile and a half this year. I mean, let's face it, he could have won 3 races on the mile and a half if he hadn't had that hiccup at Las Vegas whatsoever. But honestly, the whole entire race, I thought it was exciting at times, and pretty much my heart pretty much felt for John Hunter Nemechek. He was leading a couple laps, and I really thought he had that truck to win. And right as when he was slowing down on the last lap, I thought, okay, he didn't run out of gas, he didn't cut a tire, but it turns out he ended up blowing an engine on the last lap, and I thought, oh, you got to be kidding me. Nemechek had a really good truck all night, and it kind of stinks how, you're leading and then all of a sudden you blow an engine on the last lap. That was just it's terrible. But then yet again, Nemechek came home 7th and everyone else, was just, riding around the middle of the pack all night. But honestly, I'm really hoping, and don't be surprised if Moffitt wins next week because we're going to Kentucky, for the trucks. And, let's not forget, the trucks, Kentucky's another mile and a half racetrack where I really think, Moffitt could steal the win.
Absolutely. And just going over, I'll real quick break down the top 10 and give you the notables. Obviously, we're talking about Brett Moffitt coming home with win number 3. Ben Rhodes comes in 2nd. Johnny Sauter 3rd. Noah Gregson 4th. And Brandon Jones was 5th. Justin Haley 6th. John Hunter Nemechek 7th. Grant Enfinger 8th. Austin Hill 9th. And Myatt Snyder came home in 10th. Some of your notables that I'm sure that in the beginning of the race, I got a text message from Corey that says, hey, Chelsea is rooting for Matt Crafton. Well, good by him. He came home 11th. Cody Coughlin, 12th. And we're going to talk about Cody Coughlin in just a minute when we go into happy and sads. Going down the list, Todd Gilliland, 16th. Stuart Friesen, 19th. Dalton Sargent, 20. And then going down the list, the other notable was Joe Nemechek, whose day ended with a bad fuel pump in 28th. Now, do I have to ask who your happy is, or do you just want to dive right into sad?
I'd probably say my happy would definitely have to go to Brett Moffitt. 3 wins. And if this team could get a full-time sponsorship, they could be a dark horse team going into the playoffs in this season. How they're going to do, I don't know, but there's a couple of mile and a half racetracks that are in there, that Moffitt could, get the win by. And then, of course, my sad would definitely have to go to John Hunter Nemechek. Like I said again, he was leading, blows an engine on the last lap. Luckily he comes home 7th, but then yet again, he had a really good truck to win, though.
And that's kind of weird to have your sad be a second place finish. That's
Yeah.
a good finish for him. But like you said, you're out there, you've led laps, and you run into a little trouble. Your day goes from leading to seventh at the finish of the race. I can understand it. My happy's going to go, obviously, to Brett Moffitt. Go get you that sponsor, boy.
Yes.
And 3 wins. He is, I think he's only 1 behind Johnny Sauter in the win column.
Yeah.
My sad is going to go to Dalton Sargent. I mean, going out of last week, being so close to that top 10, almost to a point where he could crack that championship 8 for the trucks, and then losing all those points to Corey Coughlin because of his bad day. That's not good. They were running tight neck and neck in the standings, and now I'll just give you a brief preview. Cody Coughlin sitting in 10th at 290, and Dalton Sargent 11th with 270. That might be the biggest gap between them in the last 6 races. So obviously a bad day for Dalton Sargent. He finished 3 laps behind, and he's not making any ground if he's going to have a day like this. So sorry, Dalton, you're my sad.
And if you look at Sargent,
so before we go on, let's go into our favorite part of the week. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you look at Sargent's average finish, it's a 14.7. Comparing to Coughlin, it's a 12.5. And actually, I'm looking at the differences between Brett Moffitt and Johnny Sauter for average finishes. Moffitt has a 9.0. Sauter has a 4.0. So you look at it, I mean, these are the only 2 guys that I think we're going to be watching out for when it comes to mile and a halves.
Mm-hmm. Or when it comes down to the end of the season, when they break down that championship 8, it's going to be Moffitt and Sauter, I believe, that are going to be battling with 2 other guys, clearly, but those are going to be the ones to watch. But without any further ado, while Corey is poring over his computer and looking for things to stump me on, let's go to the average finish for the week. We'll start with Corey. Corey had Stuart Friesen as his lock. Stuart Friesen, unfortunately, came home in 19th. As his sleeper, he had Brett Moffitt. Came in first. You add those together. That makes 20. You divide it by 2. Corey, your average finish for the week? 10. I had Todd Gilliland as my lock. Todd Gilliland came in 16th. I had Justin Haley as my sleeper. Justin Haley came home in 6th. You add those together. You get 22. You divide it by 2, and you get 11. So Corey Huffnagel walks away with the Truck Series average finish for the week. Congratulations, Corey.
Thank you.
So let's go to the points real quick on the truck side. Johnny Sauter still sits in the lead with 4 wins and 508 total points. Noah Gragson with 1 win right behind him in second, but at 443 in points. Now, will that 58 points be a big factor going forward? It might when you consider Brett Moffitt is only 20 points behind Noah in third, 3 wins, 423 points. Stuart Friesen fourth with 368. Grant Enfinger fifth with 367. Justin Haley, 6th with 362. Matt Crafton, 7th, 356. Ben Rhodes rounds out your top 8 with 349. And then the next 4 notables are Myatt Snyder, 307. Corey Coughlin, 290. Dalton Sargent, 270. And Mr. Hill, I want to call him Bobby so bad. Bobby Hill, and 12th at 258. The drop-off between Ben Rhodes at the cutoff and Myatt Snyder is 42 points. In your opinion, without a win, can Snyder leapfrog Rhodes coming down the stretch and going into September when the playoffs begin?
See, I probably say yes and no because, even though Snyder is a rookie this year, I really think if you look at Rhodes' finishes, 4 top 5s and 6 top 10s, I mean, I really think, Rhodes is probably going to be consistent, and I think he's going to point his way in, depending on what the other guys do. But if you look at it, Rhodes didn't win until pretty much when we went to the playoffs at Las Vegas last year. And if you look at this team this year, it's a 10.2 as an average finish, and then Snyder's a 12.7. So it's not really too bad. But then yet again, I'd probably say Rhodes is going to make the top 8 by a slim margin.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first. Corey Huffnagel says he's going to win the championship. Anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Xfinity Series, your Overton's 300. Kyle Larson comes home with a victory, leading more than 80 laps in that race. The next closest to him was the second place Kevin Harvick. Quite an interesting race, if you ask me. Tyler Reddick, who had a bad day in 33rd, led 35 laps of that race. So the lead was spread around a bit. I know Bell led some. Brandon Jones led some. Chase Briscoe got up there for a few laps. Hemrick got up there for a few laps. Overall, it was a real exciting race.
See, I really think this was going to be a Kyle Larson type of race because, even though he started in the back because he had a change of flat tire during, qualifying, I literally watched this kid this year, and no matter what track you take him on, especially when it comes to mile and a half, he knows how to run that high line really well, and he knows how to drive a really loose race car, whatsoever. Because let's face it, he's run a lot of dirt races in his career, and and I think he just won another one. I think a few days ago or wherever he was racing at and so forth. But I really think if you look at this race on Saturday, it wasn't really too bad the first two stages, and then of course we had the only big accident of the day was when we had Jeb Burton and Tyler Reddick and Ryan Reed get together in turn 3, and then mostly after that, it was just a smooth race. And then if you look at pretty much the top 10, it was, like I said all along, all Cup drivers, Kyle Larson wins the race, Kevin Harvick second, Suarez fourth, Paul Menard comes home 8th, Chase Elliott 10th. So the one thing I look at it, I said, okay, at least the good thing was it wasn't pretty much the biggie Cup guys like, Busch and Keselowski and Logano and all that. Well, the only biggie one was Harvick, and, and even though he's a 2-time champion whatsoever, solid run for that 98 car. And I mean, let's face it, Harvick, when he gets into an Xfinity car, he's destined to win and so forth. But yet again, I was really impressed with all the Xfinity regulars, Cole Custer coming home in 3rd, and then Hemrick coming home in 5th. And then, of course, Allgaier coming home 7th. I mean, I probably say Hemrick and Custer, those are going to be my two guys that I'm going to be watching from now until the start of the playoffs, and hopefully one of those guys can get a win.
I don't disagree with you. And, just in watching this race, I came away with a couple of things. And before we go into happies and sad, Elliott Sadler seemed to just be riding around, almost pointless. And we're going to get into Elliott Sadler in just a few minutes in more detail. But the one thing, like you said, it came down to being, like you said, a Kyle Larson kind of race, a Kyle Larson kind of day, which if you fast forward to Sunday's race, those mile and a half, especially one like Chicago, where there's no true straightaway, it's that backstretch is slightly curved.
Right.
Unlike others where it's a dead on straight, Larson just went out there and did what Kyle Larson does, and he took that mile and a half to school. He took the field to school, and it showed leading 80 laps. So, good on him. And as we go into happies and sads, I'm going to start with sads, and I have 2 of them. One, just for, our local love and our local racers, Kaz Gralla coming home dead last. Poor guy. Talk about a bad day for him. And Tyler Reddick, as you mentioned, a guy who is competing for the championship, to come home 33rd and be involved in that wreck was not a good day for him. My happy is going to be Cole Custer finishing in 3rd, and you'll find out why in just a few short moments after we get happies and sads from the one and only Rowdy Huffnagel.
All right, so my happy for this one would definitely have to go to Cole Custer as well. Like I said, this kid, it's been pretty consistent this year. He's destined to win a race, and I really think he could win one before the season's out. My sad for this one would definitely have to go to Jeb Burton. I really thought he was going to have a good run in that 3 car, and I think they said it was going to be his last run in the 3. I think for a little while, until the Xfinity playoffs come up and so forth. But really disappointed, and I really thought that 3 car was going to have a good run.
Yeah, so did I, because as we look at our average finish for the week, I had Jeb Burton as my sleeper. He came home 34th. I had Cole Custer as my lock. He came home in 3rd. You add those 2 together, you get 37. You divide them by 2. My average finish for the week was 18.5. Not the best run ever. Let's go to Corey's picks. Corey had Kyle Larson as his lock, meaning that he won the week. His sleeper was Daniel Hemrick. He came home 5th. You add those together, you get 6. You divide it by 2. Corey, your average finish was a 3. which
All
is the
right.
second highest total you can get on the Xfinity Series. So, good job by you.
Thank you.
So let's break down the points. And I told you we'd talk about Cole Custer again because making his move to the top of the food chain in the points is Cole Custer with 541. Daniel Hemrick second with 538. And we talked about this for the last couple of weeks. Who was going to leapfrog Elliott Sadler? Two guys did, because Elliott Sadler's sitting in third with 537. Christopher Bell is in fourth, 513 with one win. Tyler Reddick is in fifth, 491 with one win. Justin Allgaier sixth, 488 with two wins. Brandon Jones seventh, 463. Ryan Truex 430 in eighth. Matt Tiff ninth with 400, and Austin Cindric rounds out that top 10 with 372. But you get 12 drivers in your championship run on the Xfinity Series. So let's talk about Ryan Reed in 11th, 359, and Ross Chastain in 12th, 315. Now, again, the only guy below them with a win is Spencer Gallagher. Unfortunately, no longer eligible for the championship.
Yeah.
But Ryan Sieg is, but if I'm doing my math right, doing my math, and I'm like 23 points behind 12th right now, sitting in 13th with 282. He's a guy that could have something going forward, and Kaz Grella dropped a spot or two, and he's now in 17th with 266. Basically, if you ask me, with the exception of somebody winning from 10th on back, you're basically looking at your championship 12 right now.
I think that's I kind of agree with you on that one.
Because, just looking at it, I could see Spencer Gallagher already has a win, but again, he could win every race till the end of the season. He's not going to be eligible.
Right.
Michael Annett, Kaz Gralla, Jeremy Clements, three guys who sitting in 16, 17, 18 right now and separated by about 33 points from Annett to Clements. Those are guys that could get out there and win races, but when you're out there against an Allgaier, a Reddick, a Christopher Bell, Elliott Sadler could sneak a win in there. He's a past champion. He could do it. And Custer and Hemrick right now kind of leading the pack for everybody. It's a kind of an uphill battle. But the more I look at it and the more I've looked back at the standings over the last few weeks, that top 12 has been pretty steady. And I don't think it's going to move. I think you're looking at your championship 12, and, you kind of agreed with me. But I'm kind of interested, if you had a choice, if you take, again, you got to take Gallagher out of the mix.
Yeah.
From 13th Ryan Sieg to 20th Joey Gacy, which one of those guys from 13 on back can you see winning a race and spoiling the party for someone else?
See, this is going to be the tough one on this one, but I'm going to go with a homer on this. So I'm going to say Kaz Gralla. And the reason why I'm picking him is, we're going to Daytona on Friday for Xfinity. And let's not forget, he won a truck race down there last year, which, of course, he escaped from the big wreck whatsoever. But let's remember this. Go back to February when he finished in the top 10, and that was when he was driving for JGL at the time before they said, okay, we're going to let you go because of sponsorship issues, blah, blah, blah. Now he's coming back with Fury race cars, and if you look at his average finish, 3 top 10s, 1 top 5, and an average finish of 20.5. I mean, this kid, he's running pretty good. And I'd say, right when he got into Fury race cars, I mean, they had some good runs, when they were at Charlotte and Michigan. And, heck, I thought, they were going to win the race, but, the rain didn't come in until, 34 laps to go whatsoever. But if you look at Gralla, I mean, he could be the sleeper that could end up winning the race. And especially, we go down to Daytona where pretty much, it's basically a crapshoot. You just never know what's going to happen. And, you could get caught up in the big wreck. I mean, a lot of the top contenders can get caught up in the big wreck, as it is. And if you look at the points right now, between first through, I believe, 7th, they're all separated by 78 points. So it's really, really close as of right now.
Yep, I can certainly agree with all of that. And we've gone through the points, and we've had our time with the Xfinity Series, but now on to the main event. And boy, was there a battle at the end. Rocky versus Clubber. Kyle Busch comes home with the victory in the 18 Toyota at the Overton's 400. Late pass by Kyle Larson. They touched a little. Kyle Busch gets run up the racetrack. Busch gets
slide job.
Slide job. Gave him the slide job. pushed him up into the wall. Busch gets a little bit of a run, tags Larson with a little bit of bump and run. And the best thing about this whole thing is that Larson kept all four on the ground, never went backward, got his composure back together to finish the race in second place. Now, the question of the week has been, since Sunday, was that dirty racing by Kyle Busch, or was that just two guys giving it their all going down the stretch?
I would probably say that was just racing, and all I can just say is that's literally what racing's all about. Two guys that were going for the win, beating, banging, pushing, shoving. You had one guy who has 4 wins this season, now 5, against one guy who hasn't even won a race and yet has finished second to Kyle Busch a couple times in his career. And I thought Sunday's race, I thought it was really exciting.
Six times.
6 times. I really thought it was. And, when that came down to the last lap, I thought, okay, Larson's going to boot him right out of the way whatsoever. I don't really care. But then Larson says, okay, I better not spin him out on purpose. So I think what should have came down to is those guys should have came down like side by side to the finish line whatsoever. But then in the end, like those were 2 guys that were going for the win, that were going to race hard, like every lap you got. And pretty much for Kyle Busch's example, it pretty much said, okay, you're going to take something from me, I'm going to take it back. So once Larson passed him going down the backstretch, then you saw Kyle Busch tap the rear bumper of Larson. And I swear, I thought Larson was going to spin coming off of 4, but luckily he saved that car and was able to finish second. But I want to say that was the best race, if not probably the best race of the year, depending on what other race is going to come down to. But all I can just say is it was a lot better than what it is at Indy and so forth. But actually, not only that race was exciting, but, yesterday, actually Sunday and Saturday was pretty much the hottest, weekend at Chicago. So I was doing some research, and the average temperature in Chicago in July is 82 versus when they used to go there in September for the playoffs, it was 74. So I'm thinking to myself, I was listening on the radio one time when I was coming home from work, and I guess the fans were complaining like, oh, it's too cold to go to the race in Chicago, where comparing to, oh, it's too hot to go to a race in Chicago. And I thought, but what's the difference, guys? I mean, Chicago, you'd rather go there like when it's like, decent weather, not like hot weather like as it was this past Sunday. There were guys that that had to sweat it out, when they were in those race cars. And inside, it was 153, and I thought, those guys are athletes. I mean, if you don't know anything about athletes and racing, I mean, just be in a race car for about 3 hours in 90-degree weather and see what it's like.
Absolutely. And one of the, you mentioned that is one of the reasons we chose Charlotte in October was because it's fall. You got the weather break, everything. You know, it's not hot, but it's not cold. It's the South. It's fall. It's going to be tolerable. Well, unfortunately, the Saturday night race was rained out that year in 2015. So we did Sunday morning at noontime. Sorry, Sunday afternoon. We got to the track early. The race went off about 12:30, and it was 94 degrees in the stands.
Yeah.
And the high for that week was 74 during the day. And we thought night racing would be great. It's going to be about 60-ish, 65-ish. You get the heat from the track. You get the heat from the day, whatever. It's going to be nice and mild. Boy, was I wrong. But then again, you can trust the weather about as much as you can trust a politician. It's going to turn on you at some point, much like the July races in New Hampshire. You always know you're going to get a hot day, whether it's hazy hot or no clouds in the sky, blaring cooked fried chicken on the pavement hot. You know you're going to get a hot race. But if you go to the September race, it's a crapshoot. I've been to only 3 cup races in New Hampshire in September. One time it was 65 degrees. The other time it was nearly 90 degrees. The third time, I believe it was somewhere in the middle, about 78-ish. So you can never just say, oh, well, it's September in New Hampshire. It's going to be breezy and cool, or it's going to be October in Charlotte. It's going to be nice and mild. Don't buy any of it. So Chicago in the summertime, they wrote a song about it. Hot town, summer in the city, hot days in Chicago. That's what they do in July in Chicago. It's the Midwest. They don't have a lot of crazy weather patterns like we do here in the Northeast, where Corey and I are from.
Yeah.
Basically, the Midwest in summer is hot. I lived in Indiana for a while. Summer's hot, and it's crazy hot right around the beginning of July. So, like you said, drive your car. If you live in the Northeast where we are, where the heat wave is kicking our butt right now, turn off your AC and roll up your windows. That's it. That's what they're feeling in those cars at 130 in-car temp.
Or as it is, you go to Daytona in like July, it's either raining like one day or you'll either get like hot weather and so forth. So, I mean, I just look at Daytona in both February and July. February, you get decent weather and, it's nice and it's like 70 degrees, as is if you go back down there in July. It's basically 50-50. One day it'll be raining and then it'll be sunny the next day. Or they'll just say, oh, it's going to be raining like every day, like whatsoever. So that's the only thing like I really don't like about Daytona is that, once it's raining, then you're just like, now we got to wait until the next day and so forth. But, hopefully the weather can play out at Daytona good this weekend, because let's face it, no race fan doesn't want to see rain.
No, never. Especially when your guy is in second and he's about to take over Matt Kenseth for the lead in the 2009 Daytona 500. There's no rain in sight, but they call the race and you get I'm sharing too much. That happened to me in Daytona for the Daytona 500 in 2009. Bad memory all the way around, but it was a great race. So why don't you go ahead and give me your happies and sads for the Overton's 400, then we'll break down average finishes and points.
See, my happy for this weekend would definitely have to go with Paul Menard. Surprisingly enough, he won the pole in qualifying. And I thought to myself, okay, when was the last time Menard ever won a pole in the Cup Series? Because that was literally like 5 years ago, the way you look at it. But
Longer.
Okay. So it probably had to be longer during my time whatsoever. But no, I mean, I was really happy for that 21 car. And I just said, that 21 car is fast. Ever since with Blaney last year, they won a race and so forth. And glad that they came home 13th. I'm really expecting a lot of things out of that 21 car this weekend. My sad for this one would definitely have to go with Austin Dillon. I mean, finishing 37th. And, even though he's sinking down in that points, even though he's got that guaranteed spot in the playoffs, I mean, I really want to see a lot more out of this team. I mean, I really want to see them run in the top 5, every week, and I want to see them run good because, let's face it, they won at Daytona a couple months ago in the 500, but since then they haven't really done anything, besides running in the middle of the pack and stuff like that and so on.
Will Austin Dillon be this year's Chris Buescher?
It's a tough one, but I really want to say no.
I'm inclined to say yes, only because, like you mentioned, he comes out strong. It could have been him. It could have been Almirola. They get together. Austin Dillon takes that checkered back in February in Daytona and hasn't I mean, I know we talk about it every time we go into the points, but he's not lighting the world on fire.
Right.
It's not for lack of trying. I think AD wants to get out there and run his heart out and prove that he belongs in that championship conversation. But when you look at it, he's not giving anybody a reason to believe in him. He slipped back in the standings yet again. He's currently sitting in 19th in the standings. Guys are starting to leapfrog over him. I'm not saying that this championship 16 is set by any way, shape, or form. But if he knocks out someone like an Alex Bowman or an Eric Jones or Chase Elliott, who have been running decently well enough to be ahead of Austin in the points, and he pushes one of those guys out, that's going to be a sad day because if you could, real quick, what is Austin Dillon's average finish this year?
Okay, so Austin Dillon's average finish is a 19.5.
19.5. All right, I'm just going to put this down to the side. Now, let's take somebody who's won only one race this year, Joey Logano. What is Joey Logano's average finish?
So Joey Logano's average finish would definitely have to go. Hold on. Logano's average finish is an 8.7.
8.7. Okay, so each guy has one win. Joey Logano currently sits third in points with 1 win at 617. Austin Dillon is behind him. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
By 303 points. Each have 1 win. The average finish is separated by about 11 points. Joey Logano, honest contender. Austin Dillon maybe got lucky at the right time. I'm not taking anything away from his ability, but he really needs to step it up, or he is going to be the 2018 Chris Buescher of these playoffs.
Yeah.
So let's break down the finishing order. We'll go into average finish, then the points. Then we'll talk about Daytona Night Racing Jones. Kyle Busch walks away with the victory after dumping Kyle. No, I'm just kidding. After a good hard run at the end.
Slide job.
And he walks away with the victory. Kyle Larson second. I didn't get my happies or stats. Neither did you. We'll do that next.
Okay. No, I got mine in.
Oh, I didn't get mine. Pardon.
Yeah.
Let me stop there. Kyle Larson definitely gets my happy. Showed that he is worthy of championship contention this year. I know he was one of those guys that we thought would be primed to win the Cup last year. Didn't work out that way, but Kyle Larson showed he's back in a big way. So props to him. My sad goes to Chase Elliott. He was up front for a while. He was in that top 5 contending and then just started to slide back like a rock. And again, it's another guy that even though he is in that top 16, he keeps dropping spots and guys are leapfrogging him. And he might be a guy who, unless he finds victory lane this season, is going to be on the outside looking in come playoff time. So going back to the finishing order, Kevin Harvick comes home third, Martin Truex fourth, Clint Bowyer fifth. Real deal Clint Bowyer, man. I can't say enough good things about him this year. Eric Jones 6, Denny Hamlin 7, Joey Logano 8, Brad Keselowski 9, and Alex Bowman rounds out your top 10. Other notables, pole sitter Paul Menard 13th, Jimmy Johnson 14th, Kurt Busch 17th, Chase Elliott 19th, William Byron 20th, AJ Allmendinger, who had a great run last week, more troubles for him, 24th, Eric Almirola 25th, and further on down the list, you got Austin Dillon in 37th. Now, before we get into the points, it was another close battle this week. We will start with Corey. He took Kyle Busch as his lock. Kyle Busch came home in first place. He took Brad Keselowski as a sleeper. Brad finished 9th. And his hopeful was Ryan Blaney, who finished 18th. You add those together, you get a number 28. You divide that by 3, Corey. Your average finish this week was 9.33. Good job.
All right. Thank you.
I took Kevin Harvick as my lock. Harvick finished 3rd. I took Martin Truex Jr. as my sleeper. He finished 4th, and I took pole sitter Paul Menard as my hopeful. He finished 13th. You add those up, you get 20. Divided by 3, my average finish for the week was 6.667, and finally I get the nod. Hooray me.
All right.
For whatever it's worth, hooray me. Here come your points. Kyle Busch still sits atop the perch at 736 with 5 wins. Kevin Harvick second, 674 with 5 wins. Joey Logano third, 617 with 1 win. Martin Truex Jr. is fourth, 594 with 3 wins. Brad Keselowski in fifth, 592. Clint Bowyer's in sixth with 579 and 2 wins. Kurt Busch seventh, 560. Denny Hamlin 8th, 537. Kyle Larson 9th with 524. Ryan Blaney rounds out your top 10 with 495. 11 through 16 goes to Eric Almirola, 493. Jimmy Johnson, 442. Chase Elliott, 13th, 435. Eric Jones, 14th, 408. Alex Bowman, 15, 390. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. rounds out your top 16 with 367. But wait, Austin Dillon is 50-some points behind him with a win in 19th place in the standings. Paul Menard 17th, Daniel Suarez 18th, and Jamie McMurray in 20th. Again, can't talk enough about some of these guys. Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Ricky Stenhouse, Paul Menard, even Daniel Suarez. You got to win to get in, guys. It's okay to try to go around. You can be Jimmy Johnson and sit in 12th and be fat and happy. But if you're a young guy, you got to get your gear going. You got to get that fire under your butt. You got to get that win to move on. Now, I say all that, and I temper it with, I look at the top 4, Busch, Harvick, Logano, Truex. Okay, 14 wins among them. Move down to 6th, add 2 more wins for Clint Bowyer. this is going to be a tough nut to crack. If you want to beat these guys, you have to get to victory lane. You have to have the good average finish. Real quick, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Average finish for Kyle Busch, our points leader.
Average finish is a 6.8.
6.8. Okay. So, Mr. Dillon, it's not okay to ride around with your win and your ticket punched and you got your bags packed and you're on that train platform waiting for your championship train when your average finish is 13 points worse than the number one guy. Now, quickly, average finish for Jimmy Johnson sitting in 12th.
Average finish is 15.1.
Okay, so now between those 7 spots between Johnson and Dillon, the average finish is separated by 4.4. You want to be the man? Get out there and beat the man. I certainly feel bad to an extent for Austin Dillon, but then again, I'm a guy who has been saying for years and years that Austin Dillon got his job based on who he's related to.
Right.
Now I'm of a mind that he does have the talent. He's shown it at Charlotte. He's shown it at Daytona. But now he's got to show it each and every week.
I definitely agree, and hopefully at Daytona, he can back that up.
Let's find out, because we are going to Daytona, and because we're recording on a Thursday, our races are on Friday and Saturday. So let's get this ball rolling. Tell us where we are and what the names of the races are.
Okay, so Friday night, which is tomorrow, we have the Coca-Cola Firecracker 250, which will be on NBCSN. If you have your tablet or iPhone, you can stream it on NBC Sports app. Remember, kids, it's free to download. And, Chris, your favorite, Sirius XM, Channel 90. If you have XM radio, the guys will be MRN.
The voice of NASCAR.
There you go. You got it. And so I'm going to read the entry list. And so I'm looking at the entry list for this weekend. I believe there's only going to be 3 Cup guys that are going to be running. And don't worry, guys, it's not going to be the biggie ones. So this weekend you'll have Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Larson for the only Cup guys for the race this weekend. So other than that, the Xfinity entry list. And I have to tell you, this is a very interesting list, from when I saw this on Tuesday whatsoever. So you have Cole Custer in the 00. You have Elliott Sadler. You have Matt Tifft. Shane Lee is going to be back in the 3 car. You have Ross Chastain, Michael Annett, Justin Allgaier, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Truex, Ryan Reed. Ryan Preece is going to be back in the 18 car on Friday night at Daytona. Brandon Jones, Christopher Bell, Daniel Hemrick. Justin Haley is going to be driving a second GMS car, driving the 24 car. And I got to tell you, he's going to be fun to watch. Also, Joey Gase, J.J. Yaley, Alex Labay, Brian Sieg. You have Jeremy Clements, Brandon Hightower, Austin Cindric will be in the 60 car for Roush Fenway this weekend. Kaz Gralla driving the 61 for Fury Race Cars. Blake Jones, Jeff Green, and Ray Black Jr.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it is now time for you to choose your lock and your sleeper. Take it away, Corey.
All right. So, Chelsea, I hope you're watching on this one. So my lock this weekend, I had a little bit of a time thinking about this, and I thought, okay, the last time the Xfinity guys were we're at Daytona in February, it came down to a battle between Elliott Sadler and Tyler Reddick in the closest finish ever in NASCAR history. So I thought to myself, all right, my lock for this weekend, I'm going to go with the one of Elliott Sadler. 1, he knows how to draft really well. 2, he's won at Daytona and Talladega a couple times. Well, I don't think he's won at Daytona. He's won at Talladega a couple times. But and 3, I really think that this could be the race where he could end up getting the win this weekend. I mean, let's face it. He should have won there in February. He came up a little bit short. I really think, this could be the race where Sadler, could get the victory, and hopefully he can stay out of the big wreck for sure. My sleeper for this one, I'm going to have to go with Ryan Preece. I really want to see how this kid does in the 18 car at Daytona, and I believe this is his first start on a super speedway, so hopefully he can draft with the guys pretty well, and I wouldn't be surprised if that 18 car can win the race on Friday night. And I really like this kid Preece, and the fact that he won a race this year at Bristol and got the Xfinity Dash for Cash bonus, I mean, I was really happy to see that.
And he was fun to watch this past year, not only in New Hampshire when you and I first met last year, but in races after that he ran that 18 car. Just an exciting kid, and he's destined for big things. He really is. Man, you know what? I looked at the lock and the sleeper all day today, and I said to myself, you know, it's Daytona. It's a crapshoot. You know, anybody can win. You know, there's a reason Derek Cope has his name on that trophy, and, you know, Sterling Marlin has his name. Ward Burton has won a Daytona 500.
Yes.
But this is, you know, that Coca-Cola Firecracker 250. This is the Xfinity Series. And I thought to myself, think as a young driver. Think as I'm trying to make a name. I'm trying to cement myself going forward into the championship. And my lock is going to be Cole Custer. He's leading the points, and with a win, is definitely going to cement himself as a very serious contender for this championship. My sleeper is going to be a guy who already has a win on the circuit, but if he were to pick up a win this weekend, he will be the third guy in 2 weeks to leapfrog over Elliott Sadler in the points. I'm going with Christopher Bell as my sleeper. I wanted to stay away from the Cup guys. I see that you also stayed away from the Cup guys.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is one of those races, and they say it not maybe with a whole lot of sincerity, because, again, we mentioned the Sterling Marlins, who won his share of races in his day, but you mentioned the Derek Copes of the world and the Trevor Baynes of the world. If you can win at Daytona, you can win anywhere. Not so much for some of these other guys. When you look at some of the names that have walked away with Daytona 500s, Busch, Harvick, Johnson, Gordon, Earnhardt. Even though it took Earnhardt 3,411 years, he finally got his win. It's one of those places where it's a really good proving ground, and I think between Custer and Bell, they need this more than anybody. Although your pick of Elliott Sadler is fantastic because it kind of sandwiches my pick. Let's see how it turns out. It's going to be good all the way around. But now we move on to the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series and Corey Huffnagel.
Okay, so this is kind of a funny way of naming this, but so the race this weekend is going to be the Coca-Cola, the Coke Zero Sugar 400. Sugar. Sugar.
Wait a minute. Isn't Coke Zero a sugar-free soft drink?
Yeah. See, the funny part is that I'm thinking to myself, okay, sugar. You had to add sugar between 400 and 0. I'm like, it's kind of like a funny way of like naming it, but then yet again, it's like, you know, I'm kind of like questioned by that just a little bit, but I don't know. I think we've both seen like race names that are like worse than that or funnier than that, but
yeah, generally every Truck Series race ever in the history of ever.
Yeah, so far this year, but all right. So, anyways, we got the the Coke Zero Sugar 400, which will be 7:00 on Saturday on NBC. Which I think up in my town, it's pretty much NBC Boston. Don't ask. They did that back in January, and I don't know how it's even a channel between NBC and 7 News or whatever. But anyways, so the race is on NBC. On the app, you have NBC Sports. Stream it online on your tablet, phone, whatever. And, of course, the race will be on MRN.
The voice of NASCAR.
Yes. It'll be a double weekend for those guys. So I'm going to read through the practice list for today, which, of course, we had Clint Boyer on top of the board, along with Eric Almirola second, Brad Keselowski third, Joey Logano fourth, Ryan Blaney fifth, Kurt Busch sixth, Kevin Harvick seventh, AJ Allmendinger eighth, Chris Buescher ninth, and Chase Elliott in 10th. And then other notables, you have Paul Menard 11th, you have Michael McDowell 12th, you have Kyle Larson 13th, Bubba Wallace 14th, Denny Hamlin 15th, Martin Truex Jr. 16th, Austin Dillon 17th, Eric Jones 18th, Kyle Busch 19th, Daniel Suarez 20th. Then you have David Reagan, Alex Bowman, William Byron, Jimmy Johnson, Ryan Newman, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Casey Kane, Trevor Bayne, Brendan Gaughan, Ty Dillon, Matt DiBenedetto, Corey LaJoie, Jamie McMurray, Ross Chastain, Jeffrey Earnhardt, Joey Gase, J.J. Yaley, DJ Kennington, Timothy Peters, and Ray Black Jr. So this was basically first practice for today.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, go ahead.
And if you look at the top 7, all Fords.
Right.
Literally all Fords. So I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be an all Ford weekend.
It might be, but I'm going to surprise you. I have 2 Fords and a Chevy in my list. I look at the last 3 weeks of racing, and I know, again, I don't want to hammer it home. I don't want to beat the horse because he's already over here bleeding his dead. But Daytona's a crapshoot. But when I look at Daytona over the years, I also see that the strongest cars are most always near the front. But there's always that one guy who is just lucky in the right place at the right time. But when I look back at the last 3 weeks of racing, we've had 3 different winners in the last 3 weeks. If you look at the top 3, top 4, top 5, there's been a constant, and I'm going to pick him as my lock. Am I going Homer? Yes, I am. Kevin Harvick, I'm taking as my lock. As my sleeper, should have won in February. Could have won a couple weeks ago. Taking Eric Almirola as my sleeper. I know that's a long shot, but again, the Fords, Stewart Haas, everything underneath them, something tells me this is the week. This is the breakout week for Eric Almirola. Speaking of breakout weeks, I know I'm breaking tradition here. You might want to mark this on your calendar. I don't quite know what time it is, but it is July 5th as we record this.
Yeah.
To have the word hopeful in the same sentence with Jimmy Johnson does hurt my feelings a little bit. But it's the track he's won at.
Yeah.
When it comes to the super speedways, Jimmy Johnson always puts on a hell of a show for his fans and fans in general. But he's got to win sometime, guys. I don't see this as being one of those years where Jimmy Johnson is going to go 0 for 36 and not walk away with a checkered flag. It's going to be this. If it's going to be any weekend, I think Jimmy Johnson wants to do it this weekend. So lock is Kevin Harvick, sleeper is Eric Almirola, and hopeful, Jimmy Johnson. Next.
Okay, so mine's going to be a little bit different. So my lock for this weekend, and of course, you look at the last 2 restrictor play tracks this season, mostly Stewart Haas was the team to beat, especially during the Daytona 500 in February. But my lock this weekend would have to go to Almirola. I mean, I look at it, he won the 400 when he was driving for Richard Petty at the time. He could have won the Daytona 500 back in February if he hadn't have got spun out by Austin Dillon. So I really
slide job. Oh no, it wasn't a slide job.
No, it was basically him just blocking on the last lap, and that's what Daytona and Talladega are. You just have to block every chance you get. See if that works. And no, I really think this is going to be a redemption race for that 10 team. And they did a really good job in Chicago. And the fact that they ended up winning stage 1, I was kind of surprised by that. And I thought, okay, when was the last time that Almirola led a couple laps? Because this has been like a really long time since I've ever seen this. But you just look at that 10 team. I mean, they've been consistent. And, of course, on the super speedways, they're always the one to watch. So I'm going with Almirola as my lock. Now, my sleeper on this one was a little bit tough on this. But my sleeper, I'm going to have to go with Chase Elliott. I mean, he's a really good super speedway racer. I mean, and the fact that this is going to be his 95th Cup start, and yet he hasn't even won a race just yet. I'd probably say, if he doesn't win and we get to 100 Cup starts and he doesn't win, then everybody's all going to be talking like, okay, why hasn't Chase Elliott won? What's going on? So
no, wait a minute. I hate to interrupt you, but Michael Waltrip went 421-0, or 0-421, and then he won twice that season. Yeah, he got his first ever Cup victory in the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not the length of time that you haven't won a race, but my God, when you watched Waltrip that season, he wanted it. Once he got a taste of it, he wanted it more, especially on the Cup level. He did well on the lower levels. Yes, he walked away with a Winston. Michael Waltrip did back in 1821. It was all well and good, but it's non-points and it doesn't count toward your resume. Chase Elliott, I keep hoping for big things for this kid, and every week he finds new and exciting ways to disappoint me.
I mean, I really think. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a really good racer. Hasn't rung the bell just yet, but hopefully this weekend, he can put that Hooter Chevrolet in victory lane, and that'd be really cool if he did that at Daytona in July. Now, my hopeful on this one. I'm going to go with a long shot on this. So my hopeful for this weekend, I'm going to go with Jamie McMurray. The reason why I'm picking him is he's also a guy that also knows how to run good on the super speedways. I mean, let's not forget, kids, he's won the Daytona 500 back in 2010, which he then drove for, I don't know, let's say Ganassi, then Teresa Earnhardt before she left whatsoever. But the one thing I really like about Jamie McMurray, the last time he ever won a Cup race was also on a super speedway, and that was at Talladega back in October of 2013. And if you look at this team right now, they've run on the super speedways really well. And McMurray, knows who to draft with. He knows how to get to the front. And I really think, we could see a new winner this weekend. And I really like McMurray's chances.
Well, I can't disagree with you. Jamie McMurray is a fantastic race car driver. Just a few weeks ago, I had him on my list. I'm going back in the notebook right now. That was at the Sonoma race. I thought Jamie McMurray would light the field on fire and end up lighting his own car on fire and finishing 37th. But basically, these picks are going to come down to Almirola is going to wash out. It might help or not help one of us because we both have them. It's going to come down to Elliott and McMurray versus Harvick and Johnson. And you know what? To be honest, I don't have a lot of faith in Jimmy Johnson. I kind of went with that pick for my shout out of the week. Hello, Skip Perry, wherever you are. The biggest, blackest Jimmy Johnson fan you will ever meet, and a hell of a guy. Love that guy to death. I told him, I said, this week I'm going to pick Jimmy Johnson as one of my picks for you. So, there you go, Skip. If I lose, it's on you, kid. If I lose, it's on you. I don't know what I'm going to do. You just have to buy extra beer or something. But
yeah,
I'm looking at your picks, and obviously, let's wash out Almirola. You got a great speedway racer in Chase Elliott. On the other side, you have Jamie McMurray, great speedway racer, super speedway. Hell of a shot on both sides. Seriously, good picks on your part, and let's hope that we have another flat-footed tie. That would be great, because nothing more exciting than when I did those numbers that week. I'm like, oh hell, this is going to be fun to talk about in just a few minutes.
Yep.
But I'm tired of losing to Corey. But our question of the week, guys, I'm putting these questions out every single week. We want to read your name on the air. We want you to tell your friends, hey, they're interactive. You want to say something? You want to answer a question? Man, this is the way to do it. And I expect little Miss Chelsea to put down her gimmick phone at some point and answer this week's question of the week, which, Corey, I'm going to ask you, and then I'll give mine.
Okay.
Obviously, it's Daytona weekend, man. What is your favorite July Daytona race memory?
I would have to say my favorite July Daytona race would definitely have to be the two times that Tony Stewart ended up winning back in 2005 and 06. And I'd probably say my favorite one would have to be 2006, was when he and Boris Said ended up battling it out for the win. And it's funny, who would have thought that, Said was a really good road course driver, but I never expected him to run really well in the super speedway. And let's face it, he could have won that night. And, that would have been probably one of the biggest upsets there was at Daytona. And it's funny because in his interview, I think after the race, he said, I feel like Rocky Balboa in round 15 whatsoever. But the one thing I really loved about, going back to Daytona in the summertime was definitely when Tony Stewart ended up winning down there. And he'd usually find a way to win the July races and stuff. But another one that I had in mind was back in 2012 when Stewart ended up starting in the back because he had an unapproved adjustment in qualifying or whatever it was. So he ended up starting 42nd, and he was able to go up through the pack, took the lead on the last lap, and then everybody was crashing on the last lap whatsoever. But and then another one was when Kyle Busch was leading on the last lap back in 2009, and Stewart was running right behind him. So then as he was coming to the checkered flag, Busch tried to come up and block, and the next thing you know, he got right on Stewart's right front quarter panel. Then Busch ended up going to the wall because, let's face it, he wrecked himself on the last lap because, A, he was mirror driving, B, he tried to block to take the win whatsoever. So,
do you have any more? I mean, you already went through 15 of them.
I'd probably say.
All right, stop.
Okay.
I asked for your favorite. You gave me 17, but they're all good.
Yeah.
They're all good. For me, I wasn't a fan. I mean, it's hard not to be a fan of this guy, but he was never someone I wore his gear. I have friends that loved him, but the 2001 edition of the July Daytona race where Dale Jr. came home with the win, just mere months after losing his father at that same racetrack, the legendary Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Yeah.
And for Jr. to win that race, man, and just the outpouring of emotion. If you remember that Daytona in February, it was Waltrip first, Jr. second. In this race, it was Jr. first, Waltrip second, and it just showed the strength of DEI at the time, but it also showed that, Jr. wasn't going to let not only the shadow of his father, but the ghost at this point of his father weigh him down. He was going to make his way and put his name out there as, when you think of Dale Earnhardt, you're going to put that little Junior at the end. Because if you're a guy like me who's been watching since 1984, those are big shoes to fill. I don't care who you are, whether you're Kevin Harvick getting into that car the week after Senior dies, or you're Dale Earnhardt Jr., and you're basically racing royalty before you ever hold a wheel in your hand. That was for me, that was his coming out party. That was when you knew Dale Jr. was for real. And by the way, what a fantastic job this past weekend Dale Jr. did on the NBC broadcast. Really brought a light, fun feel to it, and no shortage of laughs, which was great. So I was really impressed with Junior this weekend.
Honestly, I really think Junior did a great job on up at the booth, and I think he's going to do a lot of great things this year. I'm really looking forward to see what he could do for NBC, and it's going to be a lot of positives. I really liked how they picked him, and like I said, he knows a lot about the sport. He likes talking about the history of the sport, and I think he's a great addition.
I can't agree with you more. He really was, and again, when we get to the end of the season, we may have to go back and recap Jeff Gordon, who's now been in the booth 2 years, and Dale Jr., who this is his first year in the booth full time. He's done the Xfinity races in the past. He's done broadcasting here and there. But this is his first full season, if you will, in the booth, shirt and tie Jones, doing his thing. Let's see what he can do. And I'm looking forward to compare and contrast Gordon versus Junior at the end of the season, both stellar for each of their networks. Gordon on Fox, Junior so far in his one race on NBC. Really, really fun. But guys, if you want to be a part of next week's broadcast, your name, whatever, you want to hear what we think about your answer. Question of the week, once again, is what was your best Daytona July race memory? Get it done. Corey, it's time to pimp yourself out like a $2 lady. Tell them where they can find you and what you have going on.
Okay, so so let's just say we're gonna just find us on the CNJ Speedway Review. We are on YouTube. Look us up, CNJ Speedway Review. So when you do like the just do like the plus sign, not the ampersand or so forth. So also we are on Twitter. We are at CJ_Speedway, and then of course Instagram, CJ Speedway, and of course follow us on Facebook. We're on there mostly. Well, I am mostly for posting up like results and standings and everything and more. So I forgot to share this out last week. I want to give a shout out to the Colby family, and I was talking with a friend of mine. His name is Dave, and sure enough, I guess Dave is a tennis player. I guess he told me that he goes to some of these matches whatsoever, but he doesn't go to like the big matches or whatever it is and so forth. But I want to give a shout out to David and Kelly Colby and the family, and not to mention, last weekend, I guess the family had another baby. They had their sixth child, which was born, I believe it was.
Six.
Yep.
Wow.
Sixth child. Her name is Claire Sophia Colby. 6 pounds, 6 ounces, 19 and a half inches long, fully healthy. And I just want to say congratulations to that family. And that's probably like that's probably the big shout out I was waiting for, because right when Kelly posted that picture up, of the newborn, I thought, okay, I really got to give this newborn, I got to give this one a shout out for real, because this one, adds perfect to the list and stuff. And what's also funny was whenever I talk racing stuff to David, like he's always like very interested, like of how much I know about the sport. And so it was actually funny a few weeks ago when I was talking to them that I do a YouTube show on TV. It's funny because his son Jack, I think he's like 7 or I forget how old he is, but he looked at me like so surprised. Like he said, "Oh, you have a YouTube show?" And I'm like, "Yes, we do. We do it on Wednesday nights, and if you guys want to watch, feel free. I'll give you guys a shout out whatsoever." And so it's funny because I forgot to do it last week, but I meant to do it. I pretty much remembered to do it this week and so forth. So Dave and Colby, if you guys are watching this, I want to say hello. And yeah, we're pretty much the guys that know a lot about racing. And if you haven't seen us for the first time, or if you did, want to say welcome. And feel free to add any opinions or topics or anything else whatsoever. And also, I want to give a shout out to Chelsea. I know that she was watching the races this past weekend. I know she was watching the races this past weekend at Chicago, and I could just say that she was really interested by it. But then, there was some parts where, I had to teach her on some stuff, and so let's just say we're just taking this, one step at a time, and then pretty sure enough, she'll end up, being a huge race fan. And as for favorite driver, I really want to say her favorite has to be Truex right now, but I really gotta literally confirm that, just to prove it whatsoever. But I told her a few days ago, I said, if you think Chicago is exciting, you got to watch Daytona this weekend, because Daytona is probably 10 times more exciting, because you get the cars traffic at 200 miles an hour, everybody's all in a big pack, and you're just sitting there on the edge of your seat going, if none of these guys don't cause a huge wreck on the last lap or whatever, everybody's going to be all right and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
And also, guys, last thing I want to mention out. So my grandmother is out of the hospital. She's doing pretty good. She is resting as we speak. And I was talking to her, I believe, yesterday, and I think she told me that I guess the doctor was going to try and get her the results, I think sometime like next week, because he's on vacation right now. So I also want to mention this too. Next week, I want to give a shout out to my cousin Johnny. He's getting married down in Pennsylvania. So Johnny, congratulations. And hopefully we will give you a shout out sometime soon. If you end up watching our show, we also want to say welcome.
Right. Absolutely. And going back to the Colby family, little Jack, if you don't have a favorite race car driver by now, here's some free advice. Anybody but Jimmy Johnson.
Yes, anybody, Jack. You could choose anybody but Jimmy Johnson.
Chelsea, I said it in the text message, and I'll say it again. You are Emma approved. That's my daughter. She's here for the summer. She is a Martin Truex Jr. fan, and you are approved. I'm going to have my United Nation of race fans upstairs. We got the Kevin Harvick guy. We got the Kyle Larson lady. We got the Denny Hamlin stepdaughter, and we got the Martin Truex daughter. So the United Nations of Racing is going to be upstairs. Thankfully, no one is a Jimmy Johnson fan, nor should they be.
Right.
But my shout-outs, I'm just going to keep preaching it until you guys watch both shows, the Loki Jabroni show. We took the week off. Man, we needed it. But next week we are back in full force on Tuesday night, live streaming on Facebook and audio only, where you can find it on iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. Great content coming up. We have a big SummerSlam WWE party going on August 19th. For more information, go to our Facebook page, ask us about it. We'll be more than glad to tell you. Love to get Corey to come down and see how we do our live gimmick. One of my shout-outs is going to go to Nat Peterson. He is not a race fan. But if I tell him I mentioned him here, he's going to watch the show and try to find out where his name was mentioned. Nat was the promoter this past weekend of Constitution State Wrestling, which Corey actually joined in for a brief hot minute to see what we were doing.
Yeah.
Basically, Nat is a local wrestling promoter, former local pro wrestler, and he puts on these great family-friendly shows featuring some former WWF/WWE talent. We had a great time this time out. It was fantastic. Nat's a real good friend, and any chance I get to support him, it is great. So if you're in the Connecticut area and you're a fan of wrestling, look up Constitution State Wrestling. It was a great time. We just live stream it and provide commentary. And at the end of it, what happens is Nat's video team takes their video, multi-camera shoot, and puts our commentary on top of it. And it is a great time. We donated some prizes for their raffle. Everybody had a good time. And I can't say enough good things. But moving forward, I want to make one very special shout out to someone I told I would give a shout out to this week. So Mike Martin of Norwich, Connecticut, if you're out there, I want to say thank you. When I saw you last, you checked the show out every now and again. You're a very busy guy, but thank you for at least taking the time to watch us when you can, even though it's on demand, and you can pick it up anytime instead of playing Angry Birds or Crossy Road or whatever the gimmick is you like. But thank you to you and your wife, Terry. Terry watches more than Mike does, but both big race fans. Terry was a big Jeff Gordon guy way back when, well, until his retirement, basically.
Yeah.
And Mike was a big Tony Stewart guy. I don't think he's chosen a new guy since the retirement of T-Stu. Very hard to fill the shoes of Smoke, but he's very anti-Clint Boyer. Can't understand why, because I love Clint Boyer. I think he's great. I want to amend a statement I made on Facebook a year or so ago. I don't know if we were doing this show at the time, but I erroneously said that should Harvick retire tomorrow, I am going to be a Ricky Stenhouse Jr. fan. I am taking that off the board for no particular reason. I'm just not sold on Ricky Stenhouse Jr., but then again, I don't think we're close to seeing Harvick's retirement. But gun to my head, I can't pick anybody right now. But as the years wear on and I hear about the Kevin Harvick retirement, you see the Rusty Wallace gear up here. You see the Kevin Harvick gear up here. I wear it on my sleeve, guys. So when that day comes, I will have 36 races to pick a brand new favorite. And I'm going to give myself some free advice. I'm going to go back to July 5th, 2018 as I'm talking about this. I'm going to give myself anybody but Jimmy Johnson. So there you have it. As we close out this week, we want to say thank you to everybody who takes the time, effort, and energy to watch us. Thank you for all the folks on YouTube and on Facebook that like us and continue to support us. And tell your friends, if you know somebody that likes racing the way that we like racing, this is the place to be every week on your YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell so YouTube will tell you, hey, the two idiots have a new show up. They're going to tell you all about whatever happened this week in racing. If you didn't see the races, we do break it down pretty well. And Corey changes his facial hair every 3 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, so you never know. You never know what I'm gonna be whenever I'm on the show. Like I'll be like a clean face. I'll be pretty much Grizzly Adams. I'll be like whatever it is. And one of my friends have told me they said, I'm pretty much the man of 1,000 faces.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all.
It's true.
Oh.
It is. It's a true story.
All right. Well, you know what, guys? Next week, there's going to be a new question of the week, and I'm going to give you a little hint, a little preview. The end of the season, big bang trivia contest that might win you guys a prize. Then again, it might not. What is the official song of the C&J Speedway Review?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Eventually you'll hear it, but not tonight. Guys, we got to go. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be ready to talk all about Daytona next week and the races coming up. What is it, Kentucky the week after?
Next week is Kentucky, yes.
Yep. So we're gonna break down the happenings at Daytona. We're gonna talk about what we think is gonna happen going into Kentucky. One of my favorite short tracks, mid-size, whatever you want to call it, mile and a half. Always a favorite. So for me, my beer, my iced tea, whatever have you, Corey and his ever-changing facial hair, you still haven't taken down that Jimmy Johnson gimmick. I can still see it.
I know.
We've been doing this now 38 weeks, and it still hasn't come. Is she over there? Is she to your left or right?
She's not in here right now, but I don't know if her favorite driver is Jimmy Johnson, but
because you looked immediately, if I'm doing my math right, you looked immediately to your left as if she's sitting there.
Well, close enough. But
bring her in. I brought my daughter in once. Bring her in. No, you're part of the family now. You got to do it. I will sit here all night. I will sing Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini until your face falls off. Get on camera. Here we go. Say hello to the people. I'm not leaving.
Okay.
Where is she? Nope.
Well,
we can do a 4-hour episode. I don't care.
Well, technically she's not in the room as we speak, but
all right, fair enough.
I mean, I could probably tell you this, since she's coming over to watch the race tomorrow night, I could probably get you on FaceTime on my phone.
You're killing me. I work until 7. I have an hour drive home. Puts me at home at 8 o'clock. That's not fun.
Right.
All right. The marching orders are out. You will be on camera before the end of this season of C&J Speedway Review. Before Miami Homestead. Get on camera, girl. That's all there is to it. All right, guys.
One of these nights, I'll try and get her on here. Hopefully.
If I have to drive up there to Peabody and sit right next to you and do it side by side, and then just reach over and be like, "Come here, just come here right now." I'm not ashamed, man. I'll do it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good night. We love you, and we'll see you next week talking about Daytona and Kentucky.
All right. Good night.